At our father's cookbook fundraiser, my younger brother Russell took the microphone and told 80 people he had spent 2 years creating the book I wrote. Then he pointed at me beside the folding tables and added, Calvin handled the printing. As volunteers began selling 300 copies with his name alone on the sponsor board, I had tested every recipe, chased every family note, and paid the printer's deposit. I walked toward the display expecting a missing credit. Instead, I found an announcement for a second volume already promised to donors. When Russell saw what I was reading, he reached for the card and said, "Don't make this awkward here. Hey everyone. Welcome to today's story. Before we begin, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel." Quick note: this story includes fictional elements for storytelling purposes, but the message behind it is what truly matters. Now, let's see what Calvin discovered. The card was propped against a framed photograph of our father in the lobby of the Westbrook Community Center, right between a glass bowl of lemon drops and a stack of pledge envelopes. It was thick cream paper, the kind Russell liked because he said white paper looked cheap under banquet lights. Across the top, in dark green letters, it read, "Coming this fall Sunday supper, with Russell Reed, Volume 2. Beneath that was a smaller sentence, thanking Russell for preserving the Reed family recipes for a new generation. I read it twice before I noticed Russell's fingers reaching past my shoulder. I moved the card before he could take it. "What is this?" I asked. He kept his smile in place because 2 women from the church choir were standing 6 feet away with signed copies tucked under their arms. "It's a placeholder," he said. "Leona wanted something to show the sponsors." "A placeholder for a second book?" "We'll talk later." He glanced toward the ballroom, where the applause from his speech had just broken into the scrape of chairs and the steady murmur of people lining up at the sales tables. "Don't make this awkward here." That was the moment promised by the card, though I didn't understand yet how much Russell had already built around it. I only knew he had announced a second book using work we had never discussed, and he was more worried about the room hearing me object than he was about explaining it to me. I slipped the card inside the front of my jacket. Russell's smile tightened. "Cal, you said you created the first one." "I said I brought it together." "You said you spent 2 years on it." "We both did." "Then why did you tell them I handled the printing?" A volunteer carrying an empty cardboard carton slowed as she passed us. Russell put his hand on my shoulder and turned me slightly, like we were posing for a photograph. He had always been good at moving people without making it look like he was moving them. "Because I had 90 seconds at the microphone," he said quietly. "Nobody needed the whole family work chart. They needed the truth. They came to buy a cookbook for Dad's teaching kitchen." His fingers pressed once against my shoulder. "Can we please keep our eyes on that?" The community center had converted an old craft room into a small teaching kitchen after Dad died. He had volunteered there every Thursday for almost 11 years, showing teenagers how to make soup, biscuits, and a chicken casserole that used crushed crackers on top, because he said breadcrumbs were for people with more patience than he had. The fundraiser was supposed to pay for 2 commercial ovens and a set of steel work tables. That was why I didn't pull Russell back to the microphone. It was why I didn't walk over to the sponsor board and take his name down. People had already opened their wallets. Dad's photograph was beside us, his apron crooked, one hand raised as if he were about to argue about the proper amount of black pepper. I didn't want the evening to become a public fight between his sons. Russell knew that. He had probably counted on it. "After the room clears," I said. "Fine." He gave my shoulder a friendly pat, then turned toward a couple from Crescent Hill who had sponsored one of the ovens. "Margaret, Bill, thank you for coming. Did you get Calvin to sign your copy?" It was the first time that evening he had suggested my signature belonged anywhere in the book. Margaret held it out to me, smiling. "Your brother said you kept all the family organized." "That sounds like Calvin," Bill said. "Postal man to the end." I had retired from the postal service 8 months earlier after 37 years, the last 14 as a station supervisor. People heard that and imagined rows of bins and a man with a clipboard. There had been plenty of both, but most of the work was people. A carrier whose mother was dying. A clerk who kept showing up 20 minutes late because he was sleeping in his car and didn't want anyone to know. Customers who believed a missing birthday card meant the entire federal government had turned against them. I was good at finding where a process had gone wrong. I was less good when the person creating the trouble shared my last name. I opened Margaret's book to the title page. The cover was familiar. Dad's old yellow mixing bowl, photographed on Nancy's kitchen table with flour scattered around it and the handle of his wooden spoon showing at the edge. I had approved that image. I had approved the title, The Reed Family Table, and the subtitle, Recipes and Memories from Harold Reed's Kitchen. What I had not approved was the wording printed beneath it. Collected and arranged by Russell Reed. Printing assistance by Calvin Reed. My thumb stayed on the page long enough for Margaret to notice. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "Ink still a little tacky," I said. It wasn't. I signed my name under Russell's credit because I couldn't think of another place to put it, then handed the book back. Russell was already 10 feet away, laughing with a local radio host who had agreed to mention the fundraiser on his Sunday program. My wife, Nancy, came through the ballroom doors, carrying a tray of empty water glasses. She was 61 and had spent 34 years teaching second grade, which meant she could look across a noisy room and tell whether I had a headache, was irritated, or had forgotten to eat. She set the tray on the registration table. "What happened?" "Not here." "That bad?" "I don't know yet." I opened another copy from the top carton. Same title page. Same wording. Nancy read it over my arm. Her mouth flattened. "That isn't what the proof said." "No." "Did Russell change it?" "He says we'll talk later." She looked toward him. "Of course he does." Nancy had never disliked my brother. That would have been easier. She liked him in measured doses. Russell remembered birthdays without writing them down. He could make a room of strangers feel like they had been waiting all week for him to arrive. When Nancy's mother broke her hip, Russell brought dinner to our house 3 nights in a row and never once asked when he could pick up the casserole dishes, but he also had a habit of describing shared work in a way that placed him at the center. If I drove 6 hours, repaired a porch rail, and paid for the lumber while Russell chose the stain, he would later say, "We fixed Aunt Marlene's porch." That kind of thing was annoying, but it had never felt dangerous. Not until I saw 300 books repeating his version in permanent ink. "Where's the approved proof?" Nancy asked. "At home, and the printer has the file?" The printer had my file. She heard the difference. "Calvin, let me get through tonight." "That's what he wants." "I know. Do you?" I looked at Dad's photograph. "I'm not shutting down the fundraiser." Nancy picked up the top book, checked the back cover, and returned it to the stack. "I didn't ask you to." "You were about to." "I was about to ask why you always think the only choices are silence or setting fire to the building." "I don't think that." "You do with him." A teenage volunteer came up and asked where to find more pens. Nancy pointed her toward a supply box under the registration table, then lowered her voice. "You can correct a lie without ruining Dad's night. I'm going to talk to Russell. Privately." "Yes." "Later." "Yes." She gave me the look she used when one of her students claimed the glue had opened itself. "You kept that card, didn't you?" I patted my jacket. "Good." By 7:30, the first 2 cartons were empty. People moved between the ballroom and the teaching kitchen, where a local caterer had set out samples from the book. Dad's white bean soup in small paper cups, Aunt Marlene's corn pudding cut into squares, and the apple cake Nancy had tested 7 times, because Dad's card said only enough flour and a warm oven. Russell stood at the center of nearly every conversation. He told people how he had grown up beside Dad's stove, how the smell of onions hitting butter could still take him back to Saturday mornings, how preserving food was preserving memory. None of that was false. He had grown up beside the same stove I had. He had loved Dad. He was the son who took Dad to minor league baseball games after our mother died, because I was still working Saturdays and Russell had more control over his schedule. During Dad's final year, Russell called him almost every evening. That was part of what made the microphone speech so hard to place. If he had been a stranger stealing from us, I would have known what to do. He was my brother, and some of his grief was as real as mine. Leona Fields, the community center director, found me near the kitchen doorway. She was in her early 50s, broad-shouldered, brisk, and carrying 3 problems at once in her expression. "We're at 218, she said. "Copies? Copies. And the pledge cards are better than I expected. That's good. Your dad would be fussing about the soup portions. He'd say those cups were made for mouthwash." She laughed, then touched my sleeve. "You all right?" "Just tired. Russell said you'd been up until 1 labeling boxes." "That part's true. I wanted to ask you about the autumn schedule before everybody leaves." "What autumn schedule?" Her eyebrows lifted. "The cooking series. Russell's 2nd volume? That's part of it." She looked toward the lobby, then back at me. "He said the 2 of you were developing another collection. Sunday dinners, holiday dishes, some of the stories that didn't fit this one. We were hoping to announce classes next month." "He said I was involved?" "He said it was another Reed Brothers project." Her voice slowed on the last words. "Is that not accurate?" I took the card from my jacket and showed it to her. "Did you approve this?" "The sponsor committee did." "When?" "Wednesday." "Russell gave it to you Wednesday?" "He gave us the wording 2 weeks ago. The design came Wednesday." She studied me carefully. "Calvin, I'm not trying to step into a family disagreement. I'm asking a factual question." "Then yes, he gave us the wording." "Did he show you a manuscript, an outline? Written by who?" "It had his name on it. Someone called Leona from the kitchen because a breaker had tripped near the warming trays." She glanced over her shoulder. "I need to handle that." "Of course." She hesitated. "Russell said the next book would fund the youth program through winter." "There is no next book." Her expression changed, not dramatically. She just stopped looking hurried. "You should speak with him tonight." "That's the plan." Before we print anything else, she left for the kitchen. I stood there holding the card while people passed around me. An outline 2 weeks ago. That meant Russell hadn't invented the 2nd volume under the pressure of a successful night. He had walked into the fundraiser already knowing what he meant to do after it. Nancy came up beside me. "What did Leona say?" He gave them an outline. "Of what?" "A book that doesn't exist. Does Russell have any of the unused recipes?" "He has the family spreadsheet." "I'm not talking about the list." She knew because she had lived through the 2 years of work with me. The original materials were in a gray metal recipe box that had belonged to Dad. Some cards were in his handwriting. Others had come from our aunts, cousins, neighbors, and people from the community center. I had scanned everything and kept working copies on my computer. Russell had copies of the photographs and the spreadsheet listing each contributor, but I had never given him the full set of recipe scans. He didn't need them for the part he had agreed to handle, which was contacting sponsors, arranging the launch, and helping me write down family memories that went between the recipes. "He doesn't have the originals," I said. "Good. He has enough to make an outline. An outline can be 12 dish names and a nice font." "That sounds like something you told a student." "It sounds like something I'm telling my husband." She reached for the card, but I folded it once and returned it to my jacket. "Don't ruin it," she said. "I'm not. You fold paper when you're angry. I fold paper when I don't have a folder." 34 years, Calvin? You should get some cake. You should stop pretending you're not angry." Before I could answer, Russell called my name from the lobby. A photographer had arrived from a neighborhood magazine, and Russell wanted a picture of the 2 of us beside Dad's photograph. Nancy murmured, "Perfect timing," and walked toward the kitchen. I joined Russell near the sponsor board. He had taken the 2nd volume card away from the display, but he hadn't changed the board. His name still stood alone under the heading Creator and Host. The photographer positioned us on either side of Dad's picture. Russell put an arm around my shoulder. "Closer," the photographer said. "You're brothers, not men waiting for separate elevators." Russell laughed. I moved half a step closer. "Hold up the book," the photographer said. Russell lifted one copy between us, angled so the cover faced the camera. "This was a labor of love," he said. The photographer lowered her camera. That's good. Say that again when I'm recording. Recording? I asked. Just a quick clip for the magazine page. She raised her phone. Who came up with the idea? Russell answered before I opened my mouth. We lost Dad 3 years ago, and I couldn't stand the thought of all his recipes disappearing into drawers. I told Calvin we had to save them. That wasn't how it happened. 2 months after Dad's funeral, I had found 3 versions of his biscuit recipe, each with different oven temperatures, and called Russell to ask which one he remembered. He had said, "You're retired soon. You should turn all that into a book." I had laughed because retirement was still more than a year away. A week later, I started organizing the cards anyway. Russell's suggestion mattered, but he hadn't spent the next 2 years doing the work he had just described. The photographer turned the phone toward me. "And you handled production?" I looked at Russell. He kept smiling. "I collected and tested the recipes," I said. "Nancy helped with the testing. Russell organized tonight and worked with the sponsors." The photographer nodded. "Great. So a real family project." "That's right," Russell said quickly. "Everybody played to their strengths." He squeezed my shoulder. I stepped away before he finished the sentence. The photographer took 3 more pictures, thanked us, and left to get footage of the teaching kitchen. Russell waited until she was out of hearing. "Was that necessary?" he asked. "Was what necessary? Correcting me on camera?" I answered her question. "You made it sound like I had nothing to do with the book. You told 80 people I printed it. I told them you managed the production details." "That isn't what you said." He looked toward the ballroom. "This is exactly why I kept the speech simple." "Because you were afraid I'd use accurate words?" "Because you get buried in accurate words. People don't connect with spreadsheets, Cal. They connect with a person. And you chose yourself. Somebody had to stand up there. You could have said my name." "I did say your name." As the printer, he exhaled through his nose and rubbed the back of his neck. For a second, he looked tired rather than polished. His hair had gone almost entirely silver in the previous 2 years, though he still wore it longer than I did. "All right," he said. "I should have explained your role better. You should have stated it correctly." "Fine. Correctly. And the title page? What about it?" "It was changed." I adjusted the credits. After I approved the proof. The old wording was clunky. It was true. It was a committee report. It said who did what. "Exactly." He lowered his voice. "You wanted 6 names on the title page. Nobody does that. I wanted credit for the people who contributed. They're in the acknowledgements. You put yourself above the title. My name is under the title." "You know what I mean." A family approached us with 2 children and asked Russell to sign their copy. He switched expressions so smoothly I almost admired it. "Absolutely," he said. "Would you like Calvin's signature too?" He kept the whole operation on track. I signed after him again. Russell wrote a full sentence above his name. I wrote Calvin Reed and the date. When the family left, he said, "See, I'm including you." "That isn't the issue." "Then what do you want tonight?" "Take your name off the sponsor board." His eyes moved toward it. "Now?" "Yes." "The room is still full." "That didn't stop you from putting it up. The board belongs to the center. The information came from you, and you want me to drag Leona into this while she's running a fundraiser?" He knew how to turn my own concern back on me. I looked toward the ballroom. A volunteer was reading out the latest sales count. People clapped. The first oven had been covered. Dad's teaching kitchen was closer to existing because the room believed Russell's version. "After tonight," I said, "you correct the page, the board, and anything sent to the sponsors. We'll sit down tomorrow. You'll correct it? We'll talk." "That isn't an answer." "Because I'm not making decisions in a hallway while you're angry." He picked up the last sealed carton and carried it toward the sales table. The carton was marked 251, 300 inches my handwriting. Even then, I noticed he held it from the bottom because I had told him the tape on one side was weak. Familiarity can make a person's behavior harder to judge. Russell knew how I packed boxes. He knew Dad's recipes. He knew I wouldn't embarrass him in front of donors. Those were ordinary facts between brothers until he used all three at once. The fundraiser ended at 9. Volunteers folded tablecloths, counted cash, and moved leftover food into the center's refrigerator. We had sold 286 copies. 14 remained in a carton near the registration table, though 2 were reserved for volunteers and 1 for the center's display case. I had been tracking the count because that was how my mind worked. Russell had been tracking the room. He knew who gave more than the suggested donation, which sponsor needed another photograph, and which city council aide had promised to come but hadn't. He could remember a person's spouse after meeting them once. If he had put that ability beside my work, instead of on top of it, the evening would have been everything we wanted. Leona brought us the final sales sheet. Between books and pledges, we covered both ovens, she said. The work tables may take another month, but tonight was a very good start. Russell hugged her. I shook her hand. Dad would have liked that, I said. Your father would ask why we didn't buy the work tables first. He never trusted an oven he couldn't kick. Russell laughed. He also never read an instruction manual. He read them, I said. He just disagreed. For a few seconds, the three of us stood there smiling at the same memory. That was the version of the night I had expected. Leona looked between us. I'll leave you two to discuss the autumn project. There isn't an autumn project yet, I said. Russell answered at the same time. We're refining it. Leona's gaze settled on him. Please let me know which one of those statements is accurate before Monday. We will, he said. And the reprint? She asked. I turned toward her. What reprint? Russell said demand was running ahead of the first run. We discussed another 500. Discussed with who? The sponsor committee. She lifted one hand. Discussed, not approved. The center hasn't signed anything. I submitted a quote request, Russell said. That's all. Under my print account? I asked. We share the project account. The account is in my name. Because you set it up. Leona picked up the cash envelope from the table. I am going to lock this in my office. I suggest you both have the conversation you postponed. She walked away before either of us could involve her further. I faced Russell. Did you order 500 books? I asked what they would cost. Using which file? The current file. The one you changed. The one we sold out of tonight. We did not sell out. 14 copies after one event is sold out for practical purposes. You don't get to define words until they behave. He gave a short, unwilling laugh. It was something Dad used to say when Russell exaggerated, and hearing it in my mouth took some heat out of both of us for a moment. Russell sat on the edge of the registration table. Look, I know you're upset about the title page. Start with the speech. I know you're upset about all of it. Good. But tonight worked. That doesn't make the lie useful. It wasn't a lie. You said you spent 2 years creating the book. I did spend 2 years on it. Doing what? Talking to sponsors. Convincing Leona this could raise real money. Getting Dad's old students to contribute photographs. Finding the photographer. Planning this event. Calling people you would never call because you hate asking anyone for anything. That is not creating the cookbook. It is creating what happened tonight. Then take credit for tonight. People don't divide things that neatly. I do. Yes, Calvin, I know. The way he said it carried 30 years of old irritation. I was the brother who labeled extension cords and kept receipts in envelopes. Russell was the brother who could borrow a truck on 10 minutes' notice because he knew half the neighborhood. Dad had trusted me with his medical appointments and trusted Russell to get him out of the house after them. We had both been useful in different ways, but Russell had always been more sensitive to the difference between being useful and being admired. Why didn't you tell me about the second book? I asked. Because it's an idea. You gave the center an outline, a page and a half. You promised classes. I said we could discuss classes. You put your name on the announcement. They needed a working title. And your name was the only part you had ready? He slid off the table. This is going nowhere. It could go somewhere if you answered me. I am answering you. You just don't like the answers. Nancy appeared in the doorway carrying her coat and my canvas tote bag. She looked from Russell to me. Are we leaving? In a minute, I said. Russell picked up his sport coat from the back of a chair. Tomorrow morning. My place or yours? Mine, Nancy said. Russell gave her a tired smile. I wasn't asking you. Then you don't understand whose kitchen Calvin works in. 10 o'clock? I said before either of them could add more. 10. Russell put on his coat. Bring the folder with the printer information. Why? So we can settle the reprint. There is no reprint until the credit is corrected. He buttoned one button and looked at me. That's exactly the kind of statement we should not make while we're both worn out. It will be the same statement tomorrow. Then tomorrow should be quick. He left through the side doors without helping carry the remaining carton to my car. That detail bothered me more than it should have. Russell had never left a heavy box for someone else if he was standing nearby. I wondered whether he was angry enough to forget, or whether he had decided the remaining books were mine because they hadn't sold. Nancy took one end of the carton. Don't, I said. Your shoulder. My shoulder is fine. Your doctor said no lifting over 20 pounds. Your doctor said to stop eating fried bologna, and I watched you make it Tuesday. That was lunch meat warmed in a skillet. Lift your end. We carried the carton through the empty lobby. Dad's photograph had already been removed from the display and leaned against the wall near a mop bucket. I set the box down, picked up the photograph, and wiped a faint ring of moisture from the frame. I'll take that, I said. Does it belong to the center? Nancy asked. It belongs to Marlene. Dad's sister had loaned it for the evening, then put it somewhere safe. I slid it between two folded tablecloths in the back seat. On the drive home, Nancy waited until we reached Bardstown Road before speaking. Saturday traffic had thinned, and the storefronts passed in patches of yellow light. How much did you hear? I asked. Enough to know he isn't confused. No. Are you? About what? About why he did it. I don't know why. You know part of it. I kept my eyes on the road. He likes the microphone. That's too easy. Easy doesn't mean wrong. He thinks you don't care about credit. I didn't until he took it. You cared. You just didn't say so because saying it felt embarrassing. I wanted Dad's name on the cover, and yours where your work was described. I turned at the light. Yes, you spent 2 years doing it. I know how long I spent. I'm reminding you because Russell will describe those 2 years until they sound like a hobby you did while he built the whole thing around you. Nancy had a way of saying the sentence I had been avoiding and making it sound less dramatic than my silence. I'm going to ask him to correct it, I said. Ask? Tell. Better. I'm not going to fight over money raised for the center. Nobody asked you to take the ovens back. I'm saying the fundraiser mattered. It did. Russell knows it mattered to you. He put the lie in the middle of something you wouldn't disrupt. I drove another block without answering. She rested her hand on my forearm. I'm not asking you to hate your brother. Good. I'm asking you to stop helping him explain this away. At home, the kitchen still smelled faintly of apple cake. Nancy had baked the final test batch there the previous afternoon, and a dusting of flour remained near the mixer despite my wiping the counter twice. I carried the carton of books inside and set it beside the pantry. The approved proof was in the top drawer of my desk, held together with a black binder clip. I brought it to the kitchen table. Nancy opened one of the finished books while I found the title page in the proof. The wording I had approved read, "Compiled and tested by Calvin Reed. Family Histories and Event Coordination by Russell Reed. Photographs and memories contributed by the Reed family and friends of Harold Reed." Russell had complained that it was crowded. I had moved the contributors to a second page, but kept our roles intact. In the finished version, the entire block had been replaced. Nancy compared them side by side. He didn't shorten it, she said. He rewrote it. Yes. Check the acknowledgements. We turned to the back. The contributors were listed, though some of the descriptions had changed. Aunt Marlene was thanked for sharing several cherished dishes. She had supplied 19 recipes, corrected 5 family names, and spent 3 afternoons with me identifying people in photographs. Nancy's testing work had become kitchen encouragement. I read that phrase aloud. What does that even mean? She asked. It means he didn't want to say you did half the baking. Less than half. You made the apple cake 7 times, because your father wrote flour like that was enough information. I checked the introduction. Russell's name appeared in the first paragraph as the son who had undertaken the work of preserving Harold's culinary legacy. Mine appeared 2 pages later in a sentence about preparing materials for publication. "This isn't one bad sentence at a microphone," Nancy said. "No." He changed every place where the work is described. Not every place. I found a caption under a photograph of me at Dad's kitchen table. It read, "Calvin reviewing family notes." Nancy leaned back. "I stand corrected." I put the proof and finished book beside each other. The printer was a small local company called Bluegrass Bookworks, run by a man named Evan Cole and his sister. I had used their online project portal to upload files, approve changes, and track invoices. Russell had access because he uploaded sponsor logos and high-resolution photographs that were too large to email. I opened my laptop and signed in. The project page showed the original cover proof approved by me on May 21. Under it was another file uploaded June 4, 3 days before printing began. Read, final, front matter, RR. The initials were not subtle. I clicked the file. The revised title page, acknowledgments, and introduction were all there. The upload history showed Russell's email address. Beneath the file was a note. Client requests replacement of pages 1-7. No design changes. Approved for press. Who approved it? Nancy asked. The project account. Meaning? Meaning the login was treated as approval. Was there a separate email? I checked. There was a message in my project inbox, marked red. Revised front matter, received from Russell Reed. Please reply by noon Friday with any corrections. If no corrections are received, we will proceed with the replacement pages under the existing approval. The message had been sent at 10:14 on Thursday morning. That was the day I had spent 6 hours at the community center labeling cartons and helping mount sponsor signs. My laptop had been at home. "Did you read that?" Nancy asked. "No. It says read." Russell had the login. Could he mark it red? Yes. Could you? Obviously. I mean from your phone. I didn't. I checked my regular email. A notification from the portal had gone into a folder created by an automatic rule I had set up months earlier. I had wanted print messages separated from ordinary mail. There were 23 notifications in it, most about invoices and file uploads. The revision notice was among them, unopened. Russell hadn't needed to hide the message. He only needed to know I was busy enough not to look. "You gave him access," Nancy said, "to upload photographs. I know why. I should have made separate accounts. Stop helping him. I'm stating what I should have done. You should have been able to trust your brother with a password." I stared at the upload date. The previous Tuesday, Russell had called to ask whether I would be at the center all day Thursday. I remembered because he offered to bring lunch. He never brought it. At the time, I assumed he had gotten busy. Now the question sounded different. "He knew I wasn't checking the portal," I said. "Probably. He asked where I'd be." Calvin. "I'm not saying that proves anything. You don't need to conduct an internal investigation. The file has his email on it. I want to know what happened. What happened is he changed it. I want to know whether he meant to keep me from seeing it." Nancy closed the finished book. "And if he says no, then I'll decide whether I believe him." "You already don't." I looked down at the cover photograph. Dad's yellow bowl had a chip near the rim. Russell had argued that we should use a cleaner bowl for the picture, but I insisted on that one because Dad had mixed biscuit dough in it every Sunday for as long as I could remember. The chip was part of the reason anyone in our family recognized it. "He had the printed books delivered to his garage," I said, "because he had room." He opened the first carton. He said he checked for damage. He saw the title page. He wrote the title page. Exactly. Nancy stood and filled the kettle. "Tea? Coffee? At 10:30 at night?" "Tea." While the water heated, I opened the public fundraiser page. Russell had posted photographs throughout the week. In one, he stood beside the sponsor board with the caption, 2 years of work finally becomes real this Saturday. In another, he held the first printed copy in Dad's kitchen. I had not known he took a book to Dad's house. The house belonged to a new family now, but the current owners had let us use the kitchen for a short promotional visit because Dad's old stove and cabinets were still there. I remembered Russell saying the magazine wanted a few room shots. I had been invited but declined because I was labeling cartons. Under the photograph, comments congratulated him. Russell had replied to nearly all of them with some version of thank you. Dad taught me everything. He had not mentioned me once. You're making the face, Nancy said. What face? The one you made when the district manager told you a 12-mile route adjustment was roughly equal. It wasn't roughly equal. Coffee or tea? Coffee. Too late. She poured tea into 2 mugs. I turned the laptop toward her. She read the posts without speaking. Then she clicked on the photograph in Dad's kitchen and enlarged it. That's not the proof copy, she said. How can you tell? The cover is glossy. She was right. The proof copy had a matte cover. He took a finished book there before the fundraiser. The cartons arrived Wednesday. And he told you he opened them Friday. He said he checked them Friday. I opened the project shipping record. The order had been delivered to Russell's address at 2:18 Wednesday afternoon. He had signed for it. That wasn't a hidden fact. I simply had not asked. He had 3 days with the books, I said. Long enough to notice any printing error he planned to call an accident, Nancy said. He isn't going to call it an accident. No, he'll call it marketing. My phone rang at 11:15. Russell. Nancy looked at the screen and shook her head once. Answer it, she said. I put the call on speaker but didn't tell him. Nancy pointed at the phone and mouthed. Tell him. I picked it up. You're on speaker, I said. Nancy's here. Why am I on speaker? Russell asked. Because she worked on the book too. A pause. All right. His voice had lost the warmth he used in public. I wanted to make sure we weren't walking into tomorrow with the wrong idea. Which idea is wrong? That I tried to steal your work. Did you change the title page? I streamlined it. Did you upload it after I approved the proof? Yes. Did you tell me? I thought I had. When? I don't remember the exact conversation. We didn't have one. Cal, there were hundreds of conversations, not about changing who created the book. That isn't what I changed. Read the 2 versions. I know what they say. Then tell me what you changed. He went quiet. I heard a television in the background and the clink of ice in a glass. Russell drank bourbon on Saturday nights. 1 glass, sometimes 2. Dad had done the same. The old page made us look like a committee, he said. The new page gave the project a clear public identity. Your identity. I was the public-facing person. You appointed yourself. You refused every interview. I refused 1 radio interview because I had a dental appointment. You refused the newspaper breakfast. It was at 7 on a weekday. You're retired. I was testing the chicken pie. Nancy covered her mouth. Though whether to hide a laugh or stop herself from speaking, I couldn't tell. Russell sighed. This is what I mean. You cared about whether the crust stayed crisp. I cared about whether anybody bought the book. Both mattered. Exactly, both, but only one of us wanted to explain the project to strangers. That doesn't make you the person who collected and arranged the recipes. I never said I cooked every dish. The title page says collected and arranged, in a broad sense. Words don't become broad because the accurate meaning is inconvenient. There you go. Where am I going? Turning it into a hearing. I asked what you did. I brought the people together. Which people? Sponsors, the center, family members. I contacted every recipe contributor. Because you like that part. That is not an answer. Nancy touched my arm and pointed toward the kettle, reminding me to lower my voice. I hadn't realized I was speaking loudly. Russell said, Tomorrow morning, I'll come over. We'll go through the credits. We can add a sticker to the remaining copies if that makes you feel better. A sticker, compiled and tested by Calvin Reed. Put it on the title page. The next run can include revised wording. And the online posts? I'll do a thank you post. That says what? That recognizes everybody. Say the words now. What words? What did I do? You want me to perform an apology on speakerphone? I want to know whether you understand what you took credit for. I did not take credit for stirring batter, Calvin. Nancy leaned toward the phone. He reconstructed recipes your father never measured, Russell. I know that. He called 37 people. I know. He wrote the head notes. Most of them. All but 6. Fine, all but 6. He paid the deposit, which the fundraiser will reimburse. That is not the point. Then what is the point, Nancy? The point is that you know exactly what he did, because you can list it when someone corners you. You simply chose not to list it when a room was applauding. Russell didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter. I'm not having this conversation with both of you tonight. Then tomorrow at 10, I said, bring every file you used for the second volume outline. There are no files, it's an outline. Bring it. Why? Because my recipes are in it. They're family recipes. Some are. Some came from people who gave them to me for this book. For Dad's project. For this book. You're splitting hairs. I'm keeping promises. Nobody is stealing recipes. Then bring the outline. He exhaled. Fine. And do not authorize a reprint. I can't authorize it. The account is in your name. Do not submit anything through my account. I said fine. And take down the second volume announcement. The card is already down. The fundraiser page. We'll discuss it tomorrow. Take it down tonight. No. The word came quickly. It was the first plain answer he had given me. Why? I asked. Because sponsors saw it. Deleting it now makes us look disorganized. We are disorganized. No, we are having a family disagreement about credit. You created the disagreement, and you are about to damage a successful fundraiser because your name isn't large enough. My hand tightened around the phone. That isn't what this is. Then prove it by waiting 12 hours. You waited until 300 books were printed. Good night, Calvin. The call ended. Nancy stared at the dark screen. He said your name isn't large enough. I heard him. He thinks this is vanity. He needs it to be vanity. Why? Because then he doesn't have to call it theft. Nancy picked up her mug, found it empty, and set it down again. You never used that word. I didn't say it to him. You said it now. I'm tired. That doesn't make it less accurate. We went to bed after midnight, but I did not sleep much. I kept replaying the microphone speech, not because it was the worst thing Russell had done, but because I had watched him choose each word. He had thanked the center, the sponsors, Dad's old students, the volunteer cooks, the photographer, and the printer by name. When he reached me, he shortened 2 years into a service anyone could have purchased. Calvin handled the printing. 4 words, neat enough to fit under his version of the evening. At 6:40 Sunday morning, I gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen. The remaining carton sat beside the pantry. I opened it, counted 14 copies, and set aside the 3 already promised. Then I checked the sales sheet Leona had given us. 286 sold, 3 reserved, 11 unassigned. The money from the first run belonged to the fundraiser after printing costs, just as we had agreed. I had no intention of interfering with that. The question was what happened next. My practical mistake had been treating the printing account like a shared family space. I changed the password, logged out all connected devices, and downloaded the full project history. Changing a password did not fix the books, and it did not settle anything between us. It only stopped Russell from submitting another file while we were talking. At 7:20, an email arrived from Bluegrass Bookworks. Evan wrote that Russell had requested a quotation for 500 additional copies and asked whether I wanted the quote prepared under the existing specifications. I replied that no additional production was authorized and asked him to hold all changes until I contacted him directly. I did not accuse Russell of anything. I didn't need Evan involved in a family argument. At 7:32, another email arrived. This one automatically generated from the project portal. Password reset notification sent to Russell Reed. He would know what I had done. Nancy came into the kitchen in her robe and slippers, saw the laptop, and poured herself coffee without asking whether I wanted any. "You changed it," she said. "Yes." "Good. It's not a solution. It's a locked door while you decide who gets a key." That sounded like something from a teacher calendar. It sounded like coffee. She poured me a cup. At 8:15, Aunt Marlene called. She was 78, lived in Jeffersontown, and had a voice that could cut through 3 rooms without becoming loud. "Your brother says you're holding up the reprint," she said. "Good morning to you too." It was good until Russell called before 8 on a Sunday. "He called you?" "He wanted to know whether I had copies of Mother's holiday recipes." "Do you?" "You scanned them last year." "I know what I scanned. I'm asking what he asked for." "The original cards." I sat straighter. "What did you tell him?" "I told him they were in your father's box." "They are." "Then I told him to ask you." "Did he say why he wanted them?" "Photographs for the second book." "There is no second book." "That is what I said." "What did he say?" "He said you were nervous because last night overwhelmed you." I closed my eyes for a moment, not from shock but because the sentence fit too cleanly with everything else. "Anything more?" "He said he was trying to keep the project moving while you settled down." Marlene paused. "Are you unsettled?" "I'm angry." "That sounds settled enough. Did you see the title page?" "I saw Russell's copy Thursday." "Thursday?" "He brought it by. He told me the book stayed sealed until Friday. Then he lied about something too stupid to remember." She clicked her tongue. "Your father used to do that with Christmas candy, said he hadn't opened the box while chewing caramel." "Did Russell tell you he created the cookbook?" "He said he finally finished Dad's book." "And you didn't ask where I was in that sentence?" "I assumed he meant both of you." "That was generous." "It was lazy." Marlene's voice softened. "Calvin, what exactly did he put in print?" I read the title, page wording to her. She made no sound for several seconds. "My 19 recipes are in a book that calls you printing assistants?" "Yes." "And calls me what?" "A contributor of several cherished dishes." "Several." "Yes. I gave you the corn pudding card with grease on the corner." "I know. Your grandmother wrote that card." "I know. Do not give Russell the box." "I wasn't planning to." "I mean it." "So do I. He has always thought affection meant open access. That may be the one useful general statement our family has produced. Don't get clever. He called me because he thinks I'm old enough to be flattered and confused. You're only one of those things." "I am not flattered." She hung up after telling me she would come by Tuesday for her photograph. I had forgotten. We still had Dad's framed picture in the back seat. I went outside and brought it in. When I removed it from between the tablecloths, a small white envelope slid onto the floorboard. It was not secret, sealed, or mysterious. Leona had written my name across the front in blue ink. Inside was a copy of the proposed autumn program she had planned to give me before the fundraiser got busy. The heading matched the cream card. Sunday supper with Russell Reed. 6 Thursday evening classes. A second cookbook planned for November. Guest appearances by members of the Reed family recipe team. Russell was listed as instructor and creator. My name did not appear anywhere. The proposal had been submitted April 18, 7 weeks before he changed the title page. Nearly 2 months before the fundraiser, I stood beside the open car door reading it, while a neighbor walked past with a golden retriever. She waved. I folded the program once, caught myself, and opened it flat again. When I returned to the kitchen, Nancy was clearing breakfast dishes. I handed it to her. She read the date first. April. Yes, he had this planned before the book went to print. Before the final proof. Before he asked whether you'd do the radio interview. Yes. Before he told you the center only needed a simple launch. Yes. She set the pages on the table. He didn't change the credits because the old wording was clunky. No. He changed them because they got in the way of this. I looked at the 6 class descriptions. Biscuits and gravy with Russell, Sunday chicken with Russell, Harold Reed's holiday table, taught by Russell Reed. 3 of the class outlines included notes I had written while testing recipes. Not exact sentences, but details Russell would not have known otherwise. Chill the biscuit bowl for 20 minutes. Drain the tomatoes before adding them to Dad's bean soup. Use the shallow roasting pan, because the deep one softens the cracker topping. He had taken information from the draft I shared, and built a public program around himself. "What do you want to do before 10?" Nancy asked. "Hear him explain it. You know what he'll say." "I know what you think he'll say." "What do you think he'll say?" "That the center needed one instructor." "And why is that him?" "Because he's comfortable in front of people." "Can he cook the recipes?" "Some of them." "Can he teach 6 classes?" "Probably." Nancy looked surprised. "You think he can?" "Russell isn't helpless in a kitchen. Dad taught both of us." "That makes this better?" "It makes it accurate." "There you are again." "Where?" "Finding the small point where Russell isn't wrong, then standing on it until the larger problem gets tired and goes home." I carried my coffee to the sink. "I'm not excusing him. You are preparing to understand him so thoroughly that he won't have to change." "I changed the password. That protects the printer account. It doesn't protect your work." "The original recipes are here." "Where?" "Hall closet." Nancy stopped wiping the counter. "The metal box?" "Yes. Move it before he arrives. Russell isn't going to walk into our closet and take it." She looked at me. "You said the same thing about the project file." "A file is different. That is exactly why he wants the box." At 9:10, Russell texted. "Running 15 late. Bring Dad's recipe box to the table. Sponsor photographer may need originals Tuesday." I showed Nancy. She didn't say I told you so. After 34 years, she no longer needed to. I went to the hall closet and took the gray metal box from the top shelf. It had a red plastic handle and a strip of masking tape on the lid where Dad had written Mains, though the contents had never respected that label. Biscuits sat behind pickled beets. A chocolate pie card was filed under meat because Dad had once dropped it and put it back in the wrong divider. I carried the box to the kitchen and set it between the approved proof and the printed book. Nancy touched the lid. "Count what's in it." "I already scanned everything." "Count it anyway." There are 84 original cards, 11 handwritten notes, and 6 photographs. You know that without counting? I made an inventory. Of course you did. I opened the lid. The first card was Dad's biscuit recipe, written on an index card that had once been white. Flour dust was worked into the creases, a brown thumbprint marked the lower corner. The card listed ingredients, but no method. Because Dad believed anyone in his kitchen should know what to do. After reading the first 5 words, I had spent 4 Sunday mornings testing temperatures and amounts until the biscuits tasted the way I remembered. Russell had come for the 3rd batch, eaten 2 with blackberry jam, and said, "That's it." At the time, those words had felt like help. I lifted the card and looked at the smaller note clipped behind it, the one where I had written the final measurements. "He can't use this box for photographs," I said. "Not until this is settled." "Then don't leave it on the table when he arrives. I want him to see what he's asking for." "He has seen it." "I want him to understand that these are the originals." "He understands." Nancy closed the lid. "Calvin, stop trying to create the explanation that will make him become reasonable." The doorbell rang at 9:48, 12 minutes early, despite Russell's message. He used the bell instead of walking in through the side door, which told me he knew the relationship had changed, even if neither of us had said how much. Nancy went to answer it. I looked at the metal recipe box, then at the printed book carrying my brother's name. Before Russell reached the kitchen, I picked up the box, carried it into my office, put it in the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, turned the key, and kept the key in my pocket. Russell reached the kitchen just as I returned from locking the filing cabinet, and the first thing he did was look at the empty place on the table where the gray recipe box had been. He carried a leather folder under one arm and a white bakery bag in his other hand. "I brought bear claws," he said. Nancy stood near the sink with her coffee. "You said you were running late." "I made up time." He set the bag on the counter and looked at me. Where's Dad's box? Put the folder down. Good morning to you too. The box is safe. I didn't ask whether it was safe. I know. He took off his sport coat and draped it over the back of a chair, then sat across from the approved proof and the finished book. His eyes moved from one to the other. You stayed up doing homework. I looked at what you changed. We were going to do that together. We're doing it now. Nancy sat beside me rather than at the end of the table where she usually took her coffee. Russell noticed. Is this a meeting or an ambush? He asked. That depends on what you brought, she said. He opened the leather folder. Inside were 2 printed pages, a yellow legal pad, and the revised front matter from the printer. He slid the 2 pages toward me. The heading read Sunday Supper, Volume 2. Beneath it was a list of 32 recipes arranged under 6 sections. Sunday chicken, pantry suppers, church basement favorites, holiday mornings, summer tables, things Dad made when nobody was looking. I recognized 26 of the titles. 15 came from the unused cards in Dad's box. 7 came from people I had contacted for the first book. 4 were variations I had developed while testing recipes that did not work as written. You said there were no files, I said. I said there was an outline. This is a file. It's 2 pages. Where did you get skillet apples with black pepper? From your spreadsheet. That title wasn't on the spreadsheet. Then from the draft. Which draft? He leaned back. Calvin, we shared documents for 2 years. I don't know which attachment held which line. I do. Of course you do. That recipe was one I developed from Dad's note about cooking apples in bacon drippings. It was in a testing document I sent you for comments. Then that's where I saw it. You didn't comment. I read it. You're listing it in a book with your name. A working title with my name. You gave the center a program in April. His gaze shifted to the paper beside my elbow. I watched him recognize it. Leona gave you that? She tried to. It was a proposal. It lists 6 classes. Proposed classes. Taught by you. Because the center asked who would teach them. Did they ask me? You hate speaking in front of groups. I didn't ask whether I should teach. Then what are we arguing about? You told them the material was yours to use. I told them it was a family project, with your name on every line. Because somebody had to put a name down. Nancy reached for the class proposal and turned it so the heading faced him. Why not write, Read Family Cooking Series? Russell looked at her. Because people respond to a person. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Then use your own recipes. They are my family's recipes. So are Calvin's. Exactly. Ours. He pointed between himself and me. This is what I've been trying to explain. Dad didn't leave a company. He left recipes. Calvin organized them. I made them useful. The sentence landed quietly because Russell spoke it as if it were obvious. I looked at the yellow bowl on the book cover, then at the outline. Useful to who? I asked. The center, the youth program, the people who came last night. Useful to you? Yes, also useful to me. It was the first time he admitted that without wrapping it in Dad's name. He opened the bakery bag, took out a bear claw, and set it on a napkin. I'm not ashamed of that. What do you get from the classes? A teaching fee. How much? $200 per class. Nancy stopped lifting her mug. You already discussed payment? The center pays instructors. You told us this was for Dad. It is for Dad. And $1,200 for you, before preparation, supplies, and taxes. You haven't prepared anything, I said. That's why we're here. He took a bite and chewed while I looked at the legal pad. Numbers filled half the page. Estimated book sales. Sponsor renewals. Class enrollment. Printing costs. At the bottom, he had written host fee, recipe development, promotion. Beside it was a figure much larger than $1,200. What is $4,800? I asked. Russell wiped sugar from his thumb. A proposed development fee for the second book. Paid by the center? Paid from sponsorship revenue. For what development? Writing, organizing, testing, photography, promotion. You wrote my work under your fee. It isn't your work yet. The recipes already exist. A list of recipes is not a book. I know. Then stop acting like the second I type a title, I've broken into your house. Nancy glanced toward the hall. You asked him to put the original box on the table. For photographs. Today, Tuesday. And who would take it? The same photographer from last night. Where? Dad's old kitchen, if the owners agree. Without Calvin, he could come. You hadn't invited him. Because I was going to invite him this morning. Nancy looked at me. Her expression said exactly what she had told me before he arrived. I kept my hand flat on the table. You planned the second book in April, I said. You changed the credits in June. You used my project account, printed 300 copies, and stood in Dad's kitchen holding one before you told me the books were open. That last part is absurd. Is it false? I opened one carton Wednesday. You told me Friday. I didn't remember the day. You signed the delivery receipt. I sign for deliveries every week. Not 300 copies of Dad's cookbook. All right. I opened them Wednesday. You saw the title page. I wrote the title page. And you knew I hadn't approved it. I believed the account approval covered the project. You believed silence covered it. Russell pushed the half-eaten pastry away. What do you want from me? I want a correction. I offered a sticker. Not just the remaining copies. The reprint can be changed. The fundraiser page. I'll post a thank you. That states what I did. Yes. And what Nancy did. Yes. And what Marlene contributed. He sighed. Yes, you remove the second volume announcement. No, then we're done. Done with what? The second book. He looked at me for several seconds. You can't cancel a family project by yourself. There is no project without the material. You don't own every recipe in that box. I never said I did. Then you can't stop the family from using them. I can stop you from using my testing notes, my writing, my files, and materials people gave to me for a specific book. You are not the family archivist. I'm the person they trusted. Because I sent them to you. Some of them. Most. No, you think Marlene would have spent 3 afternoons with you if I hadn't told her this could raise real money? She's our aunt. She also has better things to do than label photographs. You are arguing that because you encouraged people, everything they gave me belongs under your name. I am arguing that this did not happen in your study by magic. He tapped the proof. You would still be adjusting the salt in the corn pudding if I hadn't put a date on the calendar. That was partly true, and he knew I knew it. I had delayed the first draft twice because 3 recipes still bothered me. Russell had reserved the community center ballroom before the book was ready, and told me the fundraiser date could not move. I had resented him for it, then worked harder and finished. A deadline had helped. It did not make the work his, but the fact sat between us and kept the argument from becoming simple. You gave it shape, I said. You got people into the room. You raised the money. I have never denied that. You denied it on camera last night. I said what each of us did. You made me sound like an event planner. You were the event planner. His face changed. Not much. His eyes narrowed and his mouth stayed open for a second before he closed it. Russell had run a small corporate events business for almost 20 years. He arranged conferences, charity dinners, retirement parties, and product launches for companies that wanted everything to look effortless. The pandemic had hurt him badly. He had rebuilt some of the business, but not all of it. He did not like people reducing his work to balloons and buffet tables. I had used the accurate term, and he heard it as an insult. There, he said. That is what you think of me. I didn't say that. You didn't need to. Event planning is your job. My job was why last night succeeded. I agree. No, you tolerate it. You think the real work happened at this table because you measured flour. The cookbook could exist without the fundraiser. Nobody would own it. People would still have it. In a file on your laptop, Nancy placed both hands around her mug. Russell, you are asking Calvin to admit your work mattered. He has done that 4 times. You still have not said his work made the book. I said he organized it. No, she said. You said he organized recipes and you made them useful. That is not the same thing. He turned toward me. Fine. Your work made the book. Say what work. Why? Because every time you describe it, you make it smaller. You collected recipes. You tested them. You wrote some of the notes. All of the notes. You wrote the notes. And? He looked down at the legal pad. You managed the printer. And? Cal, I'm not reciting an inventory. You found space for 4 words last night. He stood and walked to the counter. For a while, he looked out the back window at the maple tree along our fence. It was early summer, and the leaves had just thickened enough to hide the neighbor's shed. Russell put both hands on the edge of the sink. I'm sorry I called you the printer, he said. The words were quiet and plain. I wanted to accept them. That was my habit with Russell. Whenever he gave me one honest sentence, I treated it like a bridge even if it ended halfway across the water. Thank you, I said. Nancy did not move. Russell turned around. I should have credited the work more clearly. I can fix that in the next run. I can post a correction today, but I am not taking down the second project because the center needs something after the ovens are installed. Sponsors want continuity. Use your own material. That defeats the purpose. Whose purpose? Dad's. Dad never asked us to build you a teaching career. Dad taught everybody who entered his kitchen. For free, because he had a pension and a paid-off house. The sharpness in Russell's voice surprised me. He returned to the table but did not sit. You have a pension too, Calvin. You have Social Security. Nancy has hers. Your house is paid off. You spent 2 years on this because you could. I spent 2 years fitting it around a business that still hasn't recovered. You never told me the business was in trouble. I didn't say it was in trouble. You just compared our incomes. I said we are in different positions. How different? Different enough. Russell. I don't need a loan. I didn't offer one. You were about to. I had been. He knew me. The cooking series gives me steady work, he said. The book gives the center steady fundraising.